Hi, my name is Lisa Andy Garcia, and welcome back to this week's episode of Restore, Reorganize, Rewire, where we talk about everything brains. Today's guest is Marianne Hickman, and we sit down together to really talk about how to raise our children holistically in a very unholistic world. It's very tricky and challenging at times, and a lot of you are parents, and you are trying to raise them up to be as healthy minded as possible. So we are going to just share some things that we found with our kids, and hopefully those tips are going to work for you. So check out the episode and we will see you there. So hey Marianne, first of all, I must say that I have been very happy and honored to have got to know you these last few days, so it's been a pleasure. And one thing that you were talking about that I wanted to ask you more about, but it wasn't really appropriate because you were with a group. You're talking about that you have a group for holistic parenting, and so I wanted to kind of know more about that. But I was kind of surprised because I thought your whole life was just around speaking.
Yeah.
So, and then I did notice that you were encouraging your children to have healthy eating habits and stuff. So I just wanted to know more about that, how it's been trying to parent holistically, and maybe what was the instigator? Like, how did you get started?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. I'm so stoked to be here, and what we've been building for the past couple of days has been way, way fun. Embarrassingly, this group for holistic parenting is not a group that I have managed very well. I thought when I first started getting into the idea of holistic parenting that I was like, oh, I'll be a leader in this industry and all that. That's my personality. I want to be the leader in whatever I take on, right? First kid in the class, top of the class, whatever. I didn't end up doing that. So now, even though the group is technically still, it exists on Facebook, I haven't moderated it. So I'm looking for someone to take it over because, I got 3 new requests yesterday, and I never touched the group, right? So really what got me started was when I first, so I went to a treatment facility in Florida to visit a family member, and they were in there. This treatment center treats a lot of things. They treat sex and love addiction, alcohol addiction, all of these things. And I went down to visit a family member during Family Week. And when they showed me this reel that they show all the family members, kind of introducing them how they help everyone in the treatment center, I'll never forget, they showed a reel that had clips from 9/11 and had clips from Columbine High School shooting, which I grew up in Denver. That was in my district. It was down the road from us. And that kind of just hit me, but I didn't realize how much it hit me. So after we saw the video, the counselor came up to me and he said, you should stay here for a week. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm here to visit my family. I don't have the sex and love addiction. I don't have the alcoholism. I don't have any of that. And he's like, but you have trauma. And I was like, what? I don't know. I didn't have any beatings. I didn't have any, all of this. And they're like, just come for yourself for a week and see what it's all about. And I was like, well, I could use a vacation anyway. I'm a mom. So sure, why not? Why not come work on myself for a week? I went back 3 months later and went for myself. And we did all of these different modalities, right? We did breath work, and we did what they called the trauma egg, and talking about all our childhood experiences. And we did this little labyrinth that they have on the grounds there, and equine therapy and all of these things. And I got home after that week. I'm like, how do I get more of that? How do I get more of the, they have talked about muscle testing and all of these things. And I was like, what on earth is this world that I've never heard of? And as I got more curious, the universe just kind of, you're aware of things then. So I became aware of seminars. My sister-in-law invited me to one, and I meet all sorts of people there that I would judge as crunchy granola people. And now I've become one of them. So every time I hear something that's a different modality of wellness or parenting or, whatever, it kind of makes me do the scientific research to find any backing to it. And then even if I don't have the science research to back it up, I'm like, well, if I'm wrong, then what's the harm? Like food coloring, right? If I'm wrong and I shouldn't be giving my kids food coloring, Does it hurt them to have food coloring removed? No. So I'm going to try it and see what happens. And the same thing with refined sugar, and the same things with, even the macros, the carbs to protein balance to whatever. And as I've adopted, yoga practice and cold plunges and sauna and working out and healing, it's come to this, really. Every problem that we experience is multifaceted. It comes from our mental health. It comes from limiting beliefs. Sometimes it comes from physical, actual trauma, right? So if the problem is multifaceted, then the solution is multifaceted too.
That's a good way to put that.
Right? Like, if I'm going to have a clearer brain because I don't eat refined wheat, like Renee teaches me all the time, here's where you buy your flour, don't buy it from the store. I'm like, oh, great. It's hard, and sometimes I'm a little afraid of judgment because I know there's so much more I can improve, but I also know it's one thing at a time. I can't switch overnight to all hemp clothing and like...
And I advise my clients the same thing. Like, it's going to be a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
You just got to do one thing. When you can incorporate one thing, then figure out what that next thing is. But if you try to do everything all at once, you're going to get overwhelmed and you're not going to do anything.
Yeah, and you'll revert back to what's easiest. So now we're a family. We grow our own chickens. We grow our own vegetables as much as we can. The garden's really suffering this year, but...
Oh, I know, mine too.
Oh, really? Yeah, it's been rough.
Tomatoes and, everything.
My plants are flowerless. I have one pumpkin plant that's surviving and everything else is like nothing. But, we love to do sourdough bread, and we love to homeschool now because I don't want kitty litter boxes for anything other than cats. And it's just been really important. So that's the long answer to your question. The short answer is it's just become so important to me to stop co-parenting with people that I don't know, aka the government, and start raising my kids in a way where they feel strong, they feel independent, and they can make choices that are not cloaked in something else, like the food coloring example. I want them to be independent on their own, and to be frank, stop poisoning them mentally, physically, and emotionally. I just want to live a clean life as much as I can.
Now, have you been doing that since they were born, or is this kind of recent?
I wish. I wish I had known then, right? Like, that's what we all say, hindsight's 20/20. When I first had my kids, they got all the shots that they gave at birth, and I didn't know what my rights were, and I didn't know the ramifications or the side effects, and I hadn't seen all the research. So it started, so I have 6 kids. The first 3 got all the vaccines, and then I stopped. Like, that was my first thing, is I stopped vaccinating based on other people's recommendations, And now I have to take all sorts of disclaimer quizzes for the schools and the districts, right? Like, yeah, I know.
You have to answer the way that they want to answer.
I'm like, I don't believe this, but okay. To get all the exemptions. So it's been a process. I'd say it started when my oldest was probably 6. So that's been, 12 years ago. I have to do the math in my head. But yeah, she's 18. So it started when she was 6, and our last baby, we didn't vaccinate at all, and by then we were full granola, as I like to say. You see upstairs, we all believe in like the healing power of energy and crystals and herbs and all this stuff. I've got a friend, Christina, she calls herself a witch now. But she's like, witch comes from the word wise woman. And I looked at our podcast workshop today, and all of us are women. And it just really spoke to my soul at the true power of the divine feminine in creating change in the world. You don't see a lot of women on stage. It's mostly, and I'm not trying to be sexist. It's just the percentages that we see. But I noticed in the room today, these are the real impactful change makers. These are the people who are teaching in schools, who are impacting dozens and hundreds of children at a time. These are the necks that turn the heads of religion, of socioeconomics, of politics. And it became so important to me as a mom to raise my kids right. So I wish I would have started sooner, but here we are.
So did you start early enough that it's pretty much all they remember, or how do they take to it? Is there some resistance?
Yeah. Oh yeah, especially some of the kids remember the Lunchable lunches. I used to buy those. I wouldn't do that anymore. But but it's been interesting because we're a blended family, and that comes with a lot of its own, I don't want to say issues, but there's different facets and different flavors that brings with it. So I've got my husband and I. Now, my husband was raised like down home country, Payson, Utah, cowboy. Like, I love that about him. He's all about the outdoors and all of that. So his grandmother was very open to holistic medicine. She was the one that would throw herbs at you anytime you were sick and all of that stuff. So he was raised with that. So he's very open to new things. Right. I think that I was one that like introduced crystals and energy healing into his life, but he's been open to it. My ex-husband has also been very open to it, but there's this push and pull, and I hate that the kids are sometimes in the middle of that with different modalities and different, what the kids might consider conflicting truths, right? And Eastern versus Western medicine, and their stepmom has her own opinions, and I'm not even here to say that they're wrong. It's just that the kids have different perceptions of how to heal and the priorities. Like my daughter, for example, she has been suffering from really bad eczema, and I'm not even sure that it's eczema at its root, but that's a symptom of something. And so with her, we were like, okay, we know that if we cut out sugar and gluten as we know it, it will probably help. Let's try it, right? And her biological father said, let's take her to a doctor. Now, again, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. But my fear was that if she went to the doctor, that the adoption of a potion or a lotion or a medication would supersede the facet of let's heal from the gut and let's heal from the inside. Like I said, a multifaceted approach to healing because it's a multifaceted problem. And that was my concern, was that the Western medicine would eliminate the need for inner work and clean eating. And it was crazy because she came home and she got a medication, which again might help. I'm not going to poo-poo on that. But I said, read the ingredients of the medication and watch for what they think the side effects will be. And then you have to say, do you want that or do you not? Let's be educated about this. I'm not here to tell you that they're wrong. I'm here to tell you to be smart. And so she started using the medication and then went back. She had been 30 days with no gluten, no sugar. I was so proud of her. And then she started using the medication and had a treat day, right? And the gluten and sugar came back and her neck flared up so much and the skin broke out so much. And I was like, okay, what are we learning? How are you realizing that your diet really does affect this, and it can affect your gut health and your brain health? And so you get this as a parent, even if you're not in a blended family. You get it from their friends and from their schools, and it's become so important for me to teach them how to self-regulate rather than teaching this is the way, right? Like, I want to teach you how to ask questions to get the results that you want. So it's been a challenge, but I think that what's cool about this, and this is what's cool, the older ones have seen the transformation from how we used to live into a more clean and healthy lifestyle, and they have observed the change. And in a way, it's almost like a conversion story, right? If you're born and raised a religion, you don't really question it, but if you convert, you're kind of more dedicated to it. In a way, they kind of are more dedicated to the healthier lifestyle because they've seen what it's like before. And the younger ones will have to have their own conversion, if you will, but there's pros and cons to.
Well, I know, and the younger ones, that's just the way they always do. However, I mean, I know that you're homeschooling, so my kids went to school or go to school. Actually, I have one left in high school, but once they're in high school and they have friends, and then they start, so I remember my oldest one, when we were living in Japan, we were on base, and they went to school on a different base. It was about 45 minutes away.
Wow.
And, that's how long it took to drive 8 miles.
Oh, it's not that far, but it's a long drive.
Ride his bike to school a lot of times and beat the school bus.
Oh my gosh.
But it was far, it was far away. So at lunch, he was, they would go to the commissary and they started that's when he discovered cup of noodles or whatever. Cheap stuff, whatever, you could stretch your dollars and most to get. But actually, the funniest thing was when he was in 8th grade, I sat with his teachers. We had like a little meeting because I wanted him tested because by the time he was in high school, I thought, well, maybe if he ever took the SAT, he needed extra time because he really had ADD. And so sat through, I listed all these things because I do a lot of interventions at home. And told all the teachers everything in a list of, educationally and then what we were doing at home and blah, blah, blah. And at the end, one of the teachers came up to me and she goes, "So, I take it I shouldn't be selling Pop-Tarts to him."
What?
Hey, Lisa Ann here, and I am interrupting this podcast episode because I want to let you know, if you are not already on my YouTube channel, I want to make sure that you go over there and check out all my content, because this podcast episode I drop once a month, but over on my YouTube channel, I'm dropping weekly tips and tricks and extra content for you that's helpful for you or your children or whoever it is that you are trying to serve. And also make sure that you go into the description below and grab my free gift that I have for you. No, yeah, she was selling. I can't even believe that, because in elementary school, teachers would never be allowed to sell anything. I couldn't believe that as a middle school teacher that she was allowed to sell things to kids. So they individually packed, so she was selling for 50 cents.
Like for her own profit? Or were they earning it through points in class? Like if you get an A, you get this, or?
No, they were actually just, I don't know if she was profiting from it, but
yeah,
she was selling it to them.
That's wild.
So I was like, no.
Oh my, for so many reasons.
I know, yeah. So anyway, it was, once they get to a certain age, it's added. I mean, you can still send lunch to them,
Oh, they'll swap it at school. We all know that.
They swap it, or they, their friends are, buying them food or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it was really bad COVID. During the COVID time, they had, I don't know if your kids were in school then or not.
They were, yeah.
Okay, well, I don't know if you know or knew, but, all the school lunches were free.
Mm-hmm.
And there was that whole, year where you didn't even have to put in your number.
Yeah, you just got all the food.
So in middle school, they have different lanes, and they had, the pizza lane and this, whatever. They have the different lanes. And so it was just, you just go up and get whatever you want.
Yeah.
And my son was, he always only brought lunch from school or from home. And I was so mad to find out, but there was nothing I could do. And so finally, when the time came where they were required them to at least put the number in, but it was still free, but they had to put the number in, then I was able to contact the lunch lady and say, okay, I'll let him, for this one lunch that he really liked, this one lunch whenever. So she was able to set it where
wow.
he could use the code for that lunch, but it wouldn't work for any other lunch.
No kidding. She was kind of backing you on that?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I actually kind of wrote her a letter and said something about blocking. Can you just not let the number work? But she said, well, I can set it so it works only with certain lunches. I couldn't even believe that.
Wow.
Yes. But it was a whole year of him in the morning before school. I'm sure he got boxes of Fruit Loops or whatever.
Yeah, oh yeah. My kids would always go early to school so they could eat the school garbage lunch and get their, oh man, I cannot tell you how many wrappers I found in the car and under their pillows of candy and school food. That was the biggest time for me where it slapped me in the face and said, this co-parenting with the government and letting them be in charge of the education of your children. I'll never forget waiting at the bus stop with my 5-year-old kindergartner who was forced to wear a mask to school. And I watched that little baby girl go to her first year at school on the bus with a mask with all these other kids that were masked up. And my heart just shattered. And I didn't know what to do at that point. I didn't know how to homeschool. I was a single mom at the time. And I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And it took me a long time to pull them out of school and get them under homeschool. And we do a hybrid. So we send them to school for band class if they really want to be a part of that. We think that's important. But it's been the biggest relief. And we pulled them out just in time because the next year was the year that people were just crazy making with the gender identity and the animal identities and the I'm a cat, you have to give me a litter box. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is, wow. Okay, yeah, I'm glad they're not there. Oh, and they're still going to be exposed to it. Like I said, I want to...
completely trying to shelter them, but...
No, but I want to teach them what's healthy and how to determine what's healthy because they're going to get so many different perspectives and all the kids have phones nowadays, and I probably gave my kids phones too early, but at the same time, I don't want them to turn 18 and not know how to manage themselves online. So,
that was a whole other.
oh,
Our phone story was when my oldest, before we went to Japan, it was still like flip phone.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, back when we had Sprint and you had to pay extra for text,
Mm-hmm.
we were not texters because that was kind of a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to text on a 10-digit?
You want to see? You're going to have to press that sucker 3 times.
Yeah, so anyway, so we never had that plan. It was like you had to pay extra, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when he was in 8th grade when we went to Japan, so when we get there, when we had to get our phones, it was also like, flip phones too. But when we get the phones, we asked to not have the plan like for the texting. They go, well, there was no such thing. They just include everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So it took him 6 months for his friends to find, for him to figure out through his friends. He comes home one day and goes, texting? No. Texting is included. Like, it's like you have to pay extra for it. And I knew that.
Uh-huh. He's like, Mom, guess what?
Figured it out. But the reason that he had a phone, he was in 8th grade, was because his school was so far away.
Yeah.
And it's like in the event, well, what if he missed his bus or whatever, and being in Japan, it was like a little bit trickier contacting and stuff. So it's like,
oh, we gave our son a phone for the same reason. We're like, you want to go to the library? I got to be able to, like, what if there's an emergency and I need to contact you? Or what if you get in an emergency and need to contact us? So
I know. So so that whole so for my son now, he's 16, but I think like last year was the official year it like kind of became his phone.
Yeah.
Like a house phone. And what I did was I just basically limited, because it's under my iTunes account, so I limited what things are on there and that he can do, and so he has it, but he doesn't use it like other kids would typically use it. You would have kept 10:30 at night. What are you doing? Duolingo.
Yeah, I know. It's my son too.
I'm like, okay, well, you need to go to bed. But,
Yeah. But it's not the worst thing you could be doing. Yeah. Have you heard of Bark? No. You would love it. We love it as a tech savvy family, right? So it's a monitoring software that sends the parent alerts every time there's like profanity or like medically concerning content, or what you can set the settings to be as sensitive or as not sensitive as you want. But we use it quite frequently. In fact, my daughter was on the bus, and some kid on the bus was airdropping everyone on the bus this horrible picture of a hand wound that his grandfather had experienced on his farm, and he lost all of his fingers, and they took pictures at the hospital, and somehow he got the picture and was just airdropping it to everybody.
So cool.
Something like that, yeah. And it scared my daughter, and she came home. We saw the Bark alert, and whenever it says medically concerning content, we're like, okay, what happened? So we looked at it, and we saw the picture on our end because it's monitoring the phone, and we had a conversation with her that was so beautiful because she would never have brought it up with us. She was like scared, and she tucked her phone away. But that night or the next morning when we talked to her, we're like, hey, we saw this alert. Are you okay? And she broke down in tears. And I was like, I'm so glad we were able to open up this conversation, because she would have been too scared to say something. Yeah. Anyway, we love that little piece of software.
Yeah, so, but yeah, you can only, you only hope that, like, you caught them early enough that, that it just becomes so much a part of them that when they're older, everything, all the yucky stuff seems yucky to them.
Yeah, like it doesn't look like food. That's my goal, is that they look at that stuff at the grocery store that their friends to give them, and they're like, that doesn't even look edible. That our phrase is, it doesn't remember where it came from. Like blue frosting doesn't have a home. It's not anywhere.
Like probably last year when we were in Japan, so my youngest, he had, back then, we don't even go to McDonald's for fries or anything anymore, but we used to sometimes go for fries.
Mm-hmm.
Never like for hamburgers. But so he had never had a hamburger or anything. So I was at a course, and I had a teacher colleague watch them, and she knows better. Hi, Grandma. So she took them on base to the McDonald's, and he had 2 hamburgers. He had such a stomach ache
I
the
bet.
rest of the night that he remembered that. It's almost like I was almost glad
Right?
that happened.
Like it
because-
imprinted.
Yeah, imprinted, and it stuck with him so bad that he will like never even remember it again.
That's great. The same thing happened to me with hamburgers specifically. I ate out and I tried it at one place and I was like, oh, that gave me a stomach ache. Maybe it was just bad that day at that restaurant. And I had one at another restaurant, same thing. And I have sworn off hamburgers unless I make them at home. I won't eat them because I'm like, hamburgers make me sick.
Yeah, so hopefully we or they come back around. We'll have that little rebellious year, kind of like the Amish when they leave the house and they get to have their rebellious year. And then they can realize, okay, maybe it wasn't so bad at home.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I see that happening, with my oldest daughter who's moved out, and she's living with her boyfriend and, kind of starting to get the feels of adulting and looking at raising her own family and all this stuff. And it's kind of interesting to watch what's important to them at that point. What stuck? What my biggest fear in watching her move out was, of course, is she going to be okay and she is safe? But the thing that made me tear up was asking myself, did I do a good enough job before she left? Did I teach her everything that I was supposed to teach her? Do I empower her enough to stand up on her own 2 feet? And gosh, I just pray every night that that's the case. It's one of those questions you never know, and you just have to give yourself the reassurance that you did enough. But I still wonder.
And that's the key thing. Then now we just have to pray every night.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, well, it was so fun getting to know you. I didn't know all those things, so that was so fun. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you.
But you are an amazing speaker and stage coach.
Thank you.
And podcast coach. Where can people find out a little bit more about you?
Yeah, you can just go to mariannehickman.com. But what I'd love to do is just give people a platform. I love giving everyone's message that is deserving a platform where they can share their message with the world. So I have that podcast database if people want it. You can go to mariannehickman.com/database, and you can find over 750 shows to put your voice on. They're all looking for guests. So if anyone wants that, they're welcome to download it and get their message out to the world, because we need more than just us. We as parents need more than just me saying something. You need your teachers to say something. You need your kids to hear it from someone else. And that's why I do what I do. It's because I'm not raising my kids alone. I'm raising my kids with a million voices, and I want the voices that are deserving to be the loudest ones out there. So that's why we're here.
Hey, thanks for watching, and I just want to remind you that all of the giveaways that we have talked about in this episode are going to be found in the description below. Make sure that you check that out and subscribe so you are the first to know when a new episode drops. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next month.